17 years. When we say 17 years, we could talk about dates, places, milestones, and everything that has happened along the way. But a church's story is never just about years. It is about people. People who believe, people who prayed, people who served, and people who stayed. And through every season, people who trusted that God was leading them somewhere. 17 years ago, we could not see everything that was ahead. We didn't know how the story would unfold. We simply knew that God had brought us together and that He was faithful. And so we began.
In July 2009, WIMO West began as the WIMO Peel congregation. As more families moved to Brampton and Mississauga, the need for a congregation in the Peel region became increasingly clear. What began as a practical response to distance became something much greater, an opportunity to reach more families, to serve more people, and to establish a spiritual home in the Peel region. Our first worship services were held in a small function room at the Sheridan College residence. There was no permanent sanctuary, no elaborate setup, just a small group of families gathering together to worship God. Approximately 12 families formed the original congregation, and even with so little, there was something they had in abundance: faith. They prayed together, they worshiped together, they studied God's word together, and they learned to trust Him together. But faith isn't always tested when things are easy. Sometimes faith means continuing when the future isn't clear.
In those early years, the church looked very different from what we know today. Services were held in the afternoon because that was the time when the venue was available. Every week, the equipment had to be transported, the worship space had to be set up, and after the service, everything had to be packed away. Then came the move to Centennial Senior Public School in Brampton. The location was remote. It wasn't easy for everyone to reach, and once again, the church had to adjust. Later, we worshipped at the Living Arts Center in Mississauga, across from Square One. Looking back, we can see that those years were more than just a search for a place to worship. They were years of learning to wait, learning to persevere, learning to trust God even when the answer wasn't immediate. There were probably moments when the permanent home we hoped for felt very far away. But the people kept coming. They kept praying. They kept serving. They kept believing. Because they knew that the God who had brought them this far would remain faithful. Perhaps that is one of the greatest lessons from our first chapter. Sometimes God doesn't change the circumstances right away. He changes us while we wait.
But while we were waiting for a place to call home, God was building something else, something that no building could contain: a family. Because when you begin with only a few families, you learn to depend on one another. You know each other's stories. You notice when someone is missing. You celebrate each other's victories. And when someone is hurting, you don't simply say, "We'll pray for you." You show up. We shared meals. We celebrated milestones. We looked after one another's children. We prayed for one another. We laughed together. We carried one another's burdens. And we served wherever there was a need. Some transported equipment. Some served in worship. Some taught children. Some welcomed newcomers. Not every contribution was seen, but every contribution mattered. And that was the beauty of those early years. There was no task too small, no person too insignificant. Everyone had something to give. And in serving one another, we became closer. In encouraging one another, we became stronger. In doing life together, we became family.
For those who were here in the beginning, these photographs bring back memories. You remember the places, the people, the struggles, the laughter, the moments that may have seemed ordinary at the time, but became precious memories. But for those who joined us later, perhaps you look at these photographs and recognize only a few faces, and that's okay, because you are not simply looking at history. You are part of what that history became. The prayers of those early families helped lay a foundation. Their faithfulness helped create a place for the generations that followed. Their sacrifices made room for new families. And the family they began building became the family you are now part of.
And then, after years of waiting, the prayer was answered. 1314 Britannia Road, East in Mississauga, a permanent home. a place we could finally call our own. But when we look back, we realize that God wasn't only preparing a building for us, He was preparing us for the building. The years of uncertainty had taught us perseverance. The years of serving together had taught us unity. The years of waiting had taught us patience. And the years of depending on one another had taught us what it means to be a church family. The building was a blessing, but the greater blessing was the people inside it.
And the story continued. The church grew. New families came. Children grew into young people. Young people became leaders. New ministries were formed. New people found a place to belong. And through every season, we continued to gather. We continued to worship. We continued to serve. We continued to encourage one another. And when challenges came, we faced them together. Because being a strong church doesn't mean we never face difficulties. It means we don't face them alone. 17 years have taught us there will be seasons of uncertainty. There will be seasons of change. There will be moments when we have to wait. But we also learned that faithfulness is not about knowing exactly what tomorrow will look like. It is about continuing to walk forward, trusting the one who holds tomorrow.
So today, we look back with grateful hearts. We remember the 12 families who took the first steps. We remember the small room at Sheridan College, the afternoon services, the equipment being carried in and out, the Centennial Secondary School, the Living Arts Center, and the many places that, for a season, became our place of worship. We remember the people who served quietly, prayed faithfully, gave sacrificially, and stayed when things were difficult. We remember the challenges, but even more, we remember God's faithfulness through them all. What once felt like a delay became preparation. What once felt inconvenient became an opportunity to grow. What once seemed small became something much bigger than we could have imagined.
And now, we stand here 17 years later, not at the end, but at the beginning of another chapter. There are still people who need to hear the gospel, families who need a place to belong, young people who need someone to believe in them, children who one day carry the story forward. There are new ministries to build, new leaders to raise, new challenges to overcome, and new things that God is preparing. We don't know exactly what the next 17 years will look like, but we know what has carried us thus far. Faith, prayer, love, service, unity, and people who refuse to walk alone. So we will keep gathering, we will keep encouraging one another, we will keep serving, we will keep loving, we will keep trusting, and we will keep moving forward together.
17 years ago, it started with a small group of families. They had a hope, they had a vision, they had challenges, but they also had faith in a faithful God. Today, we are the continuation of that faith, the continuation of those prayers, the continuation of that sacrifice, the continuation of that family. And now, it is our turn to carry it forward. 17 years behind us, a stronger faith within us, a closer family beside us, and a greater purpose ahead of us. 17 years of God's faithfulness, closer to God, closer to one another, stronger together.